Folks, welcome back to another episode of Coffee, Tea, and Crime. Today, America's first mass murderer. It's July 13th, 1966, Chicago, Illinois. Our suspect, who is known to be an alcoholic and a full-time petty criminal, was in a bar getting drunk there in Chicago. Now, despite the fact he was only about 24 years old, he had over 20 arrests. And just to show you what a loser he was, he had a tattoo on his forearm that said "Born to Raise Hell." I could think of some other more appropriate tattoos for his arm. Now, when he wasn't drinking full-time, he periodically worked on cargo ships that traveled the Great Lakes. Now it's about 11 p.m. on the 13th. He decides he's going to break into an apartment, trying to get him some cash. Now he goes to the rear window of a townhome, moves the screen, breaks out the glass, and he's able to get his arm through and unlock the door. Now this townhome, it's a two-story. There are nursing students. They all are working at the South Chicago Community Hospital. Now there's 9 of them. They're all in their 20s, and so they're all full of vim and vigor over their career choice. Now our suspect, he's armed with a knife and a pistol. So when he initially gets in, he confronts 3 of the nurses. I take it from the resource material, these 3 nurses may have been on the ground floor in the little living room area. He takes all 3 of them and he forces them into a bedroom. Well, inside that bedroom, there's 3 more of the females. So now he's got 6 females to contend with. Now he tears pieces from a bed sheet and he ties all the women up, their hands and their feet. Now, him being a nautical kind of guy, he's able to tie some of the knots he's learned from working the ships out on the lake. So now it's a little after midnight, July the 14th. 3 more of the nurses, they come home. As soon as they walk in, he gets the drop on them, takes them to a bedroom, ties them up. So now there's 9 women tied up. Now he tells them that he's only there to rob. Now in an interview that he gave when he was in prison, now this wasn't an interview where there's a reporter or anyone of official status like police or anything. It's a homemade prison video. He said the reason number one, he started killing them was because one of them spit in his face. But then later on in this same homemade prison video, he talks about he didn't want any witnesses. So now he gets all the money and valuables he can find. He starts taking the women into different rooms and he starts killing them one by one. Obviously the other women could hear the muffled screams coming from their roommate. He strangled some, stabbed others. Some of them he strangled and stabbed. Now one of the nurses, she's able to roll off the bed and she rolls underneath bunk bed. Now our suspect, who's drunk and he's not very intelligent, he loses count of how many women there are. So after he's killed 8 women, he goes through trying to account for everybody, and near as he can figure, he must have killed everybody in there. And he leaves. This lone survivor, she waits till 6 a.m. to make sure he's gone. She's able to get herself untied enough that she's able to crawl out onto a 2nd-story ledge of their townhome. She starts screaming for help. She's hollering, "They've killed all my friends." Now the police make the scene. They get a good description of the suspect. Then they have the sketch artist. He's able to put together a sketch of the suspect. Now this is back in the old days when your sketch artist, he actually did it by hand with a pencil. Now they have an app on the computer that does it for you. Now, back in this time, you had newspapers that came out in the morning and in the evening, and this sketch makes the papers. Now the police did a really good job getting out there looking for this fella. They were able to find out eventually what his name was. So now they had a name to go with that sketch. Now our suspect, he's hiding out in a $1 a night hotel. Even in 1966, that's pretty low rent. Well, he decides he's going to kill himself, so he slashes his arm from wrist to elbow. And that's on July the 16th. Now he's transported to the hospital. Now luckily, the on-call ER doctor just happened to have glanced at the newspaper, saw the composite drawing, and also had read enough to know that the suspect's supposed to have that tattoo on his arm about born to raise hell. So that doctor, they notify the police. They tell him, you better get down here to the ER because we got a fella down here that looks like the drawing, and he's got that tattoo on his arm. So the police, they head on down to Cook County Hospital. They snatch him up. Now our surviving victim's able to identify the suspect, and they get the suspect's fingerprints. I believe he had some on file down in the great state of Texas. And they're able to match his fingerprints to the crime scene. Now our suspect is convicted and he's sentenced to death. However, in 1972, before the lawful sentence can be carried out by the state of Illinois, the Supreme Court decides it's time to invalidate the death penalty. So they re-sentence our suspect, and he gets 400 years in prison. And probably the only humane thing our suspect did his entire life was he died of a heart attack December 5th, 1991. Now the reason for the title of this episode being America's First Mass Murderer was the consensus seems to be this is the first time that the media used the word mass murderer. It happened plenty of times before, but this is the first time they'd come up with what we now know is a pretty common term. What a wicked, horrible man. And if you get a chance to watch any parts of that homemade prison video, I would advise you to do it on an empty stomach.